So budgets in Vantaca, I feel, are much easier, and they'll be even easier next year when we don't have to go necessarily all the way back to QuickBooks to pull information too. But we have to do that right now. So to start a budget, you go to accounting and click budget. Surprise! So right now, this is the budget as it was entered for 2023. So this year.
And you got it up at the top. It says Barrington Court.
I do want to change that to currently.
Okay.
Just kidding.
Yeah, make sure you're in the right property.
Yes, I was debating on which one I was going to do, so I was flipping back and forth.
Okay, so select property.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, make sure you read the tabs at the top.
Yes.
Okay.
So important thing is you want to make sure that you're in the operating fund because that's where we are funding. And then like I said, if it says fiscal year 2023, that is your current budget. But obviously we're working on next year's budget, so we have to change this to 2024. But what happens, I'm not going to do it quite yet because I want to show you. So on where it says status right here, right now this says proposed and approved. This is the approved budget because this was the current year's budget. But when we switch it to 2024, if it loads, you don't want to click this until your board has approved the budget because this is literally finalizing it.
That's like the update.
Yes. Don't put that button yet.
So what you're saying is when the board approves the budget, we don't have to give it to Hilda. We just push that button.
Right.
And
Yes,
it's done.
magically it's all done.
Cool.
And if that button gets pushed, what happens?
We have to go and unapprove it, and then Vantica probably will yell at us.
Well, yeah, because what happens is all of the financial
Mhm.
reports are pulling from that approved budget.
Yeah.
So you want to make sure you don't mark it approved until it is actually approved.
That being said, other important things that are up here that you will hit a lot is going to be your new GL. So if there's something that hasn't been in your budget that you need to add, so like if you know your community's planning on doing a special assessment or an insurance assessment or something like that, you can just do a new GL tab to add it in to where it needs to go. And then as you go, I am a proponent for hitting the save button a lot
Yes.
because you don't want to undo anything and lose what you've been working on. So just make sure you're hitting this save button right here. This is the safe button. This one's okay.
So if I wanted, just to back up a minute, so if I wanted to take, like at Victory, their porter services are under 5878 porter. If I wanted to put them to 5404, then I would do new GL.
Yep.
Could I delete the other GL?
Yes, but we're gonna go over that in a little bit.
Okay,
Okay.
that's what I wanted to know too.
But yes, because the Vantaca does help you keep track of. I personally found that like on QuickBooks, a lot of times you would end up with the same type of budget, and then you would forget to do things like change it from one topic to another. And then whenever you're doing your invoices, you're like, oh snap, I put that in the wrong area, and I never changed it on the budget. Vantaca will tell you like, hey, did you know you have this GL in here that you're not using?
That's helpful.
And so it makes it a lot easier to compile things where they're actually supposed to go. But so this is how you start. And scroll down quickly. So the easiest thing to do is delete some of these columns because you have a bajillion columns. So you want to leave the GL number because obviously we need the account numbers. You want to leave the 2023 budget because that's what you budgeted last year. And then you want to leave the actual because that's what you actually spent. But
So far for this year.
it made me click on it, and now it's loading.
I was just gonna say, I wonder if we can just go change all the grid lines to
Maybe.
default to that.
I don't know.
But so like I went through and got rid of a lot of these because you don't need them. We don't need the 2024 actual because we're not spending money yet, so that's just a useless column.
Okay.
If you want to see the percent change, you can, but again, you don't need to see it unless you're looking at doing a percent increase on your special assessment and you want it to calculate it for you. It'll tell you like, oh, you're increasing this by 12%. Is that what your board wanted to do?
Is that going to be too much information for our boards?
We will discuss that at the end, sir. You are
Well-
jumping ahead.
Let me see what
Yes, it will be, and that's why at the end we'll change some things.
So
But
I have a question, so are those pre-selected on our,
they're automatically in there, so you can go through and you can really set it to whatever you think you need to see.
okay.
Well, what I'm double checking real quick to see if I can just change
Just all of
the
them.
default to be something else.
Oh, so then
So-
it'd be
so then you wouldn't have to
automatically
go.
what we need, okay.
But even at that, if you change it to something you want to see, then you just go to where the little, the settings wheel is
Yes.
and save
And
grid,
save.
like save grid, and it'll keep it there for you
But
individually.
the important ones to have on there are your 2023 budget, your 2023 actual, your annual, which will be for your new year, so in this case 2024, and your notes and your monthly. Because when you do that,
No, you can't change it for
Did you say
everybody.
your fiscal, right?
So
you
they
say
have to go in individually.
Actual,
But once they do it once, they do it.
annual, notes, and months.
Annual,
And those are all,
So then it ends up
Okay.
looking a lot better because then we can see our 2023 budget is here.
okay.
What we actually have spent so far in 2023. This is going to be your 2024 annual expectation right now because we haven't changed anything. And then your months. So
Okay.
you can scroll over and see. So if you have the same amount each month, it'll do the math for you. You don't have to do math. But if you know that, like, okay, in August we're going to have the auditors here, so I need to go add just that 1 month, then that's why you want your months there so that you can go in and adjust that one specific month instead of having it divided out over all 12.
And to get to those options, to add your monthly
You
and,
just click the little dots
okay.
where it says column settings.
and then you can change all of them from one
Mm-hmm.
thing, okay.
So actually, I'm going to save grid settings so that they don't go away.
Okay, y'all do know how to save the grid settings on things if you need to. Okay.
I always forget to save them and then I get mad. I have to go back and redo them over and over and over.
Yeah, I was just looking to see.
I did that,
Yeah.
yes.
Uh,
I know how to-
I
So
um,
you saved on next Wednesday for the rest of them?
it will save for everyone that she logs into. So once you save your grid settings,
Mhm.
if you save them that way, the next budget you go into should be
Okay.
set up that way.
Okay, so
But-
it's all of them that we do.
But like it doesn't, because I saved mine, it's not gonna save yours.
Right.
Yeah, I was
Yeah.
just looking to see if we could go in and default all of them, but I couldn't.
So does it autofill the annual?
Yes. So it autofills based on what you had last year. So you'll be able to go down the line. So for car and delay, they are not doing a special assessment as of right now. For 2024. So I'm gonna change this to 0. And you can see it auto-populated all my months to 0.
Okay.
Now, the only way that your totals line down here is going to change is if you hit save.
Oh,
So you need to put.
Like I said,
it
click
every
save
time
a
you
lot.
make-
Yeah,
every time you make-
typically when we're entering budgets, for each section we hit save.
Right.
To double check and make sure our totals match that.
Where's-
But as
where's
you're-
the save button?
It's up here at the top.
Okay, I see.
Yeah, so like in that case, special assessment 0. I knew what that one was, not a big deal. Now, Car and Delay has already talked about the fact that they will do a 20% increase on their dues. So I can take this number that was their 2023 annual from last year and go ahead and add my 20% to it. Which I will do on the calculator because I cannot math.
Okay, and let me make a suggestion there.
Where'd you get-
She got it off of her computer.
Oh.
Let me make a suggestion there. Look at your last variance report and make sure your dues are really what you budgeted last year before you start using last year's numbers. Because some are off by, like
Just a lot.
ROC, because of the vacant declarant lots,
Mhm.
their budget's off by 1 or 2 lots.
Oh, okay.
Okay, so you need to make sure that your
So that number may not be correct. I need
your
to add-
budget account may not be correct because like Sable Creek, they've had more lots sold.
Mhm.
They may not have had as many as they anticipated this year, so the budget may be overstated, or it may be understated if they sold more lots.
And
Georgetown
That's
would
what I was
be,
fixing
yeah,
to say. Georgetown would
Yeah.
have changed considerably.
right. So make sure you look at that. Don't just take what last year's budget was Cause you may end up having then a variance all next year because of sales and stuff.
And so like for a car and delay, just to do like the quick math to double check, I use the actual, I keep pointing like y'all can see my finger and you can't. I use the actual for up to June, because that's what we've done so far, and just divided it by 6, since that would be 6 months, and that's 10, 7, 16, 41, which is what I have right here. So I know that what we've actually billed so far this year is matching what was budgeted. But, like the
Have you
declared,
done your July report yet?
not yet, that is on my list.
Oh, okay. Cause yeah, if you have actually done your July
Then it'll
report,
update
then
to
you're gonna
July.
have to make sure
Divide by 7.
you look at
Right.
7 months. Once y'all finalize the report is when those numbers get updated.
Okay.
So yeah, so make sure you're looking at like what month it has in the parentheses here, because that's where
Okay.
you'll know how many to divide by.
Okay.
But so yeah, so back to what I'm doing. So with their number from last year, I can change their total annual to 154,316.
Can you go back just to make sure everyone understands? Can you explain the keystrokes you did on the calculator?
Sure. I typed in my total for my regular assessments, 128,596.92 plus, and I typed 20, and then I clicked the percent button and hit, and that's what it says. 20% of that number is 25,000, and then I hit enter, and that gives me my total.
So the enter automatically adds it on there.
Mm-hmm. Because I am lazy, they told me that.
Well, actually, I always take it times 1 point whatever, and it automatically adds it in too.
So
Excuse me.
here you can see where my numbers change for each month from 10,000, which is what they were for last year, to 12,859. So that shows the increase. But the cool thing about Vantaca is I can, instead of having to keep track of all the changes you've made to do your narrative, I can put a note for myself right here and say, added in previously discussed 20% increase.
That's cool.
Oh, under the notes, okay.
So you can put notes in there and they can see those.
So if
Yes.
you know that the utility company is estimating that there's gonna be a 5% increase, you can say utility
That
company
doesn't
notified a 5% increase. Or contract is up for renewal and vendors anticipating this, or whatever.
Yeah, so you can add a note, which is really handy. So then, when you are doing your narrative or when you're talking to your boards, you can see exactly why that line item changed.
They can see the notes too, can't they?
When we export it, there is a way for them to see them too.
That's good.
So again, save because I want my numbers to update, my totals. So you can see where our total down here changed to 198. So for car and delayed, they have reimbursement for utilities. So this one will match whatever my utilities are at the bottom. So for now, I'm not gonna touch that one. I'm gonna go back to it and just make myself a note to go back to my utilities. Now, with your budget items, like your late fees, you are gonna have to look at 2 different reports, because you're gonna have to look,
This year.
yes, this year, hopefully only. You are gonna have to look in QuickBooks and in Vantaca, so that you can get your averages like we used to, where we would just pull up the report in QuickBooks for 19 months and divide it. Can't really do that since they're in 2 different places.
And how many months worth of data are we looking for?
19 is what you have told us to use in the past.
That should be your minimum, by the way.
So yeah, but
Which,
for late fees, it's pretty good.
Yeah.
'Cause
so you'll change, so for, I had to remember which report I was pulling because I haven't pulled a QuickBooks report in a while. So as a reminder, when you go into QuickBooks, you will go to reports and you will go to financials and pull your profit and loss. Oh, dang it, no, I changed the date. Okay, whatever. So, I don't know, how many 19 from June?
I would just do, their-
1 of 22.
yeah, I would do from January forward.
That's what I had it as. Okay, so here I can see my late fees were $220. In Vantaca, this is when our dual screens would come in handy.
Mm-hmm. That's true.
In Vantaca, mine and Cherry's opinion, the easiest report to pull, is going to go to reports, check your property, make sure you change it to who you're working on, and then do financials.
Financials.
Mm-hmm. And you're gonna scroll down to income statement with codes for those those that share my office, this is written on my whiteboard so I don't forget.
That's what that is.
And why is that one so important?
Because this will show you your annual year to date, but you can also click on these items and see that from January to June, this one says July, we're gonna change it to June since that's the number we're working from in Vantaca. We billed $145 in late fees, but this report is very handy, especially when we're doing budgets, because we can click on the item and actually see what was billed when.
Okay, and I'm gonna interject here
Mhm.
just because obviously their late fees are $5, right?
$12.
Right. For any owner, it's $5 a month. Some of them is percentages and so forth. Don't budget $32 a month. There is no way they're gonna make $32 a month. It's gonna be a multiple of $5. So, you know, when you get your average, then you need to look and say, okay, is that feasible for this? When I divide it by 12, is it going to be $47? Then let's go ahead and make it $50, okay? To make it a $5 number, because you're always gonna be off on your budget otherwise.
Is there any way to run this report back to November?
You can change the, yes, you can change the,
I don't think you can, no, you have to run 2 reports.
Yeah.
Okay.
But for late fees specifically, we're only off by 2 months. So
Okay, so
not
I have
big
a
deal.
So this
second,
is the income statement?
I have a secondary question. Could you run an income statement for last year and it have the data pulled over from QuickBooks?
Yes.
So you don't have to be in
Statement with
QuickBooks?
codes.
Yes, but you don't have the
You
detail.
don't have the
Don't do detail.
details.
Okay,
So, but you can, if like for late fees, it's obvious. We don't necessarily need to know exactly which units, oh dang it, got a late fee, because we don't care about the individual unit, we care about the total. And that information was pulled from QuickBooks. So you can see that our late fees for all of last year was 220, and then we had 140 this year so far. So we could take those two numbers and divide.
360 and divide it by 12 months.
And lovely calculator. So $30 a month, but of course we don't want to rely on that, so I will cut it in half and do 15 per month.
Yeah, I do understand what she just said. We don't rely on that.
Mm-hmm.
You're not really budgeting late fees for income.
Right.
You want to under budget late fees.
I had this conversation with Jason yesterday. There are things that we do not want to depend on. You know, most of our associations do not want the fine money, they want compliance with the declarations. So the fines and late fees, stuff like that, you don't wanna depend on that as income. Does that make sense?
So I've adjusted that number to 180, which is obviously gonna be less than what we got this year, but that's okay. And I can put my notes if I need to understand like why I did that. Don't really need to.
Well,
But-
you could put something
Hope we
as
don't need late fees.
you could put it as so simple as took historical numbers divided by 2. Don't want to rely on late fees for income. Because you don't want to budget all your expenses based on that income, because it may not happen. Hopefully, some properties are getting really good about paying.
Currently, really, their whole $5, like,
I had a property that we got a judgment on a very large balance that we were getting a percentage of late fees. And when we got that, it wrecked my late fee budget, even though I had shortened it on purpose. It still destroyed my late fee budget line item, because now we had the judgment, we couldn't charge late fees on that amount anymore.
but,
We mark that in the system.
I explained it.
so,
Did
to
we
that
mark it
point,
in
again,
Vantaca so
save
they didn't
changes so that your
charge
totals
you?
will update. Car and Delay is adding a utility late fee for their utility payments, because their docs literally say a $5 late fee is all you can bill. And no one cares if they get a late fee for $5. That is everyone's last bill that they're worried about. So I clicked the new GL button.
We're gonna have to create it.
Yeah, we're probably gonna have to create one because I don't think we have one.
Yeah, we're gonna have to create that.
So-
Will it allow you to do that? Oh, I don't know if it'll allow everybody to do that.
I'm gonna say no.
Okay, when you have to, if you see that you have to create one, the chart of accounts that for that property is in there. There shouldn't be much you have to create, but because they're doing something different where they're starting a new thing, we're gonna have to create a utility late fee. You would have to come to me because you don't have access to create the account, okay?
But you can see that should it have already been in there, that's how easy it is to add a line item. I can just type in utilities and click what it is, and ta-da, it'll put it down in its correct spot once I hit enter.
You can click that corner button that says new G.
Mhm.
The
new GL.
Yeah. Okay.
But when you click new GL, it's gonna use the existing general ledger in their accounts that maybe you don't have on this list. So like if you've never used plumbing before, then you would go click that and show the plumbing. But because she is creating a brand new account that's not in that property, she's going to have to come to me first. For me to create it, then she'll go add it as a new GL line on her.
So you can add line items, but you cannot create
A GL account.
GL out of thin air.
Can't just make them up. Can't just have like Ashley's fun money. That's not enough. So then for bank interest, where did my phone go? We'll do the same thing like I said, since we don't really need to know if there's only like 1 month that they had an additional amount of money. We can see that we did 82.42 last year. And then I learned this from Cherry, this fun button gets you a lot closer to where you need to go. Because I don't want to click.
Y'all do know that,
7
right?
times.
That where it says Wednesday, August 9th?
No, I didn't.
You
I
can
didn't know.
click-
I saw her do it the other day. I was like,
No, I didn't.
That makes it a whole lot clearer.
yeah. I did the same thing when I saw her do it. I was like, okay. So I had 82 and then 21.15 is what I have now. So go back to my report. Divided by 12. Same thing. Don't want to rely on it, so I'll drop it down to $5 a month.
That's what
$60 for the year. Why aren't you typing? I don't know what it's doing.
Just allow you to change it.
It's not wanting me to.
Is
Hit
it
save
that's
real
the
quick
old
and then do it
settings.
again.
Yeah, because you didn't hit save from the last entry. Maybe.
You're stuck somewhere.
I'm stuck. I wonder if I'm stuck because of that.
Hit refresh. And this is the reason why you save, is because she would have lost what she
She would have
already
lost
done.
everything she had done.
Not have been sad.
None of your stuff's stuck. Oh, you gotta change the fiscal year.
Yes.
That is true. Every time you go out, it's gonna come back defaulted to 2023 right here.
Boom.
60.
Okay, you got that by you did the what was the one? Where does the 103 come in at? When did you get the?
So I did it. I looked at what we did last year. Well, actually, I used this report since I didn't have to. I did so far this year. We've made 21.15, and then last year we made 82.42. So I just added 21 and 82, and then divided by 12.
Oh,
And took the lower.
Okay.
The use of QuickBooks should be minimal.
It's gonna be more involved with your expenses,
Yes.
cause you may have to look at some detail on expenses
To
on
see
that.
like why you had like a wonky one. If you
But
budgeted
that's- yeah, but that's
20,000
my
and
point.
spent 50.
Okay.
But you need to have that as a tool to utilize. But truthfully, you guys will not need much information out of QuickBooks.
So you
Because you should know if you had a weird off deal, because every one of y'all had your properties for all of last year.
Okay, but if you're having problems with QuickBooks on your computer, I need to know that now.
yeah, I don't have QuickBooks.
It disappeared.
I think I'm the only one that had it in our.
I have it again, but I made it download it yesterday. So for laundry income, Car and Delay, their laundry income's all over the place. We budgeted really low last year, and then we got like $4,000. And then this year, I budgeted $2,400, and we've made nothing. So for last year we had 1,000, and for this year so far we've had 260. So
So
that's
where
hard.
do they get laundry income from?
They have a laundry room, and they have a some of your properties may have like a outside vendor that takes care of the machines. They give the property a commission of what they get.
They get a percentage, but
And quite often, they don't fund the checks like they should. So
Yeah,
there's
and that's
a
one reason why it's always goofy.
they generally, with those and with like vending machines, I don't think any of us have vending machines that get funded. They'll like hold your check until you hit a certain number. So be like, oh, well, you only made $10 last month, so we didn't send you a check. Oh, but you made $200, so we sent you a check for the last 4 months. And it's like, oh, well, now my budget is
Screwed.
all over the place. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
So for the last 18 months, I had $1,260. So $70 a month. But again, I'm not gonna rely on that because their income is all over the place. So I'm probably gonna leave that at like 40 and just do it that way, which is a big adjustment from last year when we budgeted 2,400.
And you can see that there's a difference between the budget from last year and this year when you're doing it. So anytime you see a big difference, you need to go ahead and write the explanation down so that when the board asks you, you're not going, I don't know, remember why I did that. This is a great way it's a great tool to be able to have it right there to go, oh,
Yeah.
I know why I did that.
In theory, when you dump this out to Excel, you could also just copy that entire
Right.
column
We're not there yet,
and
but
put
yes.
that into your narrative.
Yeah, well, they don't even have to put it in the narrative. They can see it in the budget.
Correct. We're skipping narratives basically, unless there's something else specifically you need to explain.
That's true.
As long as you're putting explanations
As long
in
as you
here.
put your explanations
okay.
here.
We'll be writing explanations on everything.
Okay, I'll have it. Make sure everything.
So you can see I did that. So now my income from the 2023 budget was 204, but this year it's only 196. So even though we did a 20% increase, it's because we took out the special assessment.
Right.
There's a good chance they will add in a special assessment because they are limited on only allowed to do a 20% increase. But that's still up in the air, so I'm not going to include that in their budget yet.
Safe.
So
I
if, you,
did say-
if they did a special assessment, that would be a separate line item.
That will be this line item right here. It says special assessments.
Okay.
And I can go in
Well,
and
I
add the
can't
total.
read that from here. So
It does say
I'm
special
sorry.
assessment, I promise.
Okay.
And so, but yeah, so we'd be able to do the total and then it would divide out the 12 months based on that amount. So office supplies and all that fun stuff. Most of the office supplies you should be able to use Vantaca for because it's gonna have the Vantaca totals and everything in there too with the new software. So
Yeah, office supplies is not. What you're really going to be looking at for QuickBooks is more your repair and maintenance.
Yes. So also you have to keep in mind like the wonky things. This is wonky. I know why they have a $9,000 charge under bank services, but I don't need to include that in their budget because hopefully no one will steal checks again.
I was gonna say, is that the check that got stolen?
Okay, let's
Oh, you
keep
never
it
got the
generic.
money. They
since
never got
we're
the
recording,
money,
okay?
please.
Because they did.
I was about to say the bank should, please.
So office supplies for 2022, I had 1235, and then for this year so far, I have 403. Oops. So $90 a month. We can see if we think office supply is going to increase. I don't see car and delay sending out a whole bunch more mail or anything than they did this year.
I don't see your office supplies are going to increase. They may actually decrease a little bit because we're not printing as much.
Right.
So we're not using as much copy paper, letterhead, things like that.
But-
envelopes.
This one was at $1,200 for the year, and that's not necessarily a bad amount to keep it at, so I'll probably just leave that one.
Mhm.
All of it to be said, keep in mind that if you've got a property you do a lot of violations for, Vantaca helps us quite a bit in doing the proper letters.
We're gonna get to that with postage.
Yes.
'Cause we'll
Yeah,
talk
well,
about
it's gonna
that.
hit the office supplies too.
It hits printing and it hits postage.
It doesn't hit the office supplies, okay.
Let me go back to December. Where's
And this
UCI
would be
Center?
something important at like at Georgetown. Or
Sable Creek.
RROC in Indian Creek. And probably Johnson Place. And so, yeah, there's quite a few there that it could come into play for.
Okay.
So for last year for printing, I had 142. But so far this year I've had 42. So obviously I'm gonna need to increase that one because, like he was saying, with the Vantaca program, we are printing more violation letters. Car delay.
How are we sending out more violations than we were before?
We're not sending out more violations, we're sending out more certified letters.
That's under postage, that's not under
And it-
printing. The printing would still be roughly the same amount, because it's the same amount of letters going
The
on.
one thing you have to consider though, and it came up at Terry Place's meeting on Monday, if people have selected all contact to go through mail, they still get those email blasts mailed to them. We had two different people that
No, we don't.
we had two different people that had that email show up in their inbox at their mail slot. Because
But I'm not seeing that when that's printing, I need to see that.
Sylvester
They had
both-
what show up now?
They had an email that we sent out about the meeting saying, hey, this
Okay.
is happening. They showed up at 8 o'clock because when they checked their mail when they got home is when they saw the notice.
But it was in paper notice.
It was on their
and
post. It was in their post box.
I wasn't, have you seen that, nobody? Where if somebody has selected mail only, all of the email blasts that we do, they get a mail piece on that as well?
I haven't seen that.
I haven't seen it. We're gonna have to check with Shayna because we may not want that to go out
Okay.
because that's not worth
Useful.
sending out.
Yeah.
I mean,
The
'cause
idea
it's-
of an email going out is it needs to, in a
The
blast, it needs to
speed.
go right now.
Right, and like I said, I
And
only
that
because
means
both Jude
would-
and Sylvester showed up and were like, we just got this in our
well,
mailbox."
that makes me wonder then if water shut-offs and things are getting mailed. So I think I'm gonna have to ask.
Okay, so we'll look into that one.
Yeah.
But my average was still slightly higher, so I'm still gonna increase it because it increased. So I'm gonna say
And if you know why it increased, you might be able to explain that to your boards. But if you don't, it's just,
just increase.
and I think that there's some, for some of the properties, the printing will increase because of Vantaca. Because you gotta remember, our previous programs, we could opt it to not send the pre-fine letter certified. Cause again, we were after compliance, not the money.
But that's still a printing. It's not postage. The difference on the
Stop. I understand that. But we weren't printing that letter before, now we are.
why would we not print a violation letter?
A pre-fine letter, we didn't. It was in the system, it was sent via email.
Well, if they didn't have email, how did they get it?
That's the only time they got them.
Well, that's the only time they get them now.
No, when they are doing, because of the way we set the letter up, they get a printed certified letter on every pre-fine
I
letter.
think your printing's going to go down.
Because of the code, because of the law, you have to send it out certified.
Okay, so but postage and delivery is gonna go up because more things are going certified.
Not only that,
But
postage went up.
twice last year.
Yes.
And that's a
So
good enough excuse to explain to your boards right there. They need to know that. They may not remember that the postage went up.
it is now $7.51 per certified piece.
I think so. Yeah.
$7.51, I think. I'll go back and double check to make sure y'all have the accurate number to tell everybody. And it is 63 cents for a regular piece of mail. And they are getting a discount because we are
Yeah.
running it through a postage machine.
That's right.
If we had to go buy stamps, it would be another 3 cents per piece.
So you can even say that in your printing and postage area, or your postage area, this is an increase due to increases in postage costs. However, we have a postage machine for your use, which gives you a discount of 3 cents per item or whatever. It sounds silly, but it's just a little chance for you to say, hey, look what we've done to take care of you.
I paid the $1,000 rental for the machine. They just pay the postage.
So last year we totaled at $252 for postage, and this year for car delay we're at $42, which we need 253. Times 12. So theirs is still lower than the average, but again, I don't think I'm going to change it because I would rather have the savings there than a huge deficit.
You also might make a small note that that's a little higher,
Mm-hmm.
and if you have to make an adjustment later, you can adjust
Right.
that column. Next.
So kept it higher because we did just experience more increases. So I would have budgeted it up if it had been the lower, but I'm just gonna leave it there.
And her point about it, but keeping it higher due to previous increases, what she's saying is, I expect the postal service to increase their fees again next year.
Mm-hmm.
So as your manager, I'm trying to be proactive. That is part of budgeting, is what do you see happening in the future, not just what happened in the past. So that's a good point to bring out.
So 117 for rental for last year, and 57 for this year.
Okay, you know,
But
the
this
rental,
is going to go down. Ideally.
let me explain the rental to y'all. Because the rental should not be taken it historically. The rental should be, how many boxes do we have over there?
Okay.
When you get to your rental line item, you can come in to me and say, how many boxes do we have? And I can tell you exactly. But what you could do is go to your last month's financials. So if you look at this year's, what did we charge under rental?
Should did the report, so I'm just gonna look at it here. So under rental and storage, she charged $15.
$15 for
$9.
$9 for this month. Take $9 and divide it by $1.50. 6. So you need to add another $1.50 because we have to keep. No, it's going to be $6.
$6. We're not adding it.
We're not adding any more boxes, but we're not getting rid of any either. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
If you got more than 7, come talk to me about the inventory list because we're probably going to get rid of boxes, and that will decrease. Your rental storage number will not increase this year at all.
Except for properties that we brought on at the beginning of the year that didn't have a lot of boxes.
No, they're still going to be the same amount. If we brought them on, if I brought on West Wind and I have 3 boxes in there, I may get rid of one of them next year, but I am not going to add to them because everything is now in Vantaca. Those boxes are just the financial records. So now everything's saved in Vantaca, so your rental will not go up, it may go down. So when you get to, if nothing else, I'll just email every one of y'all one and you can look at the sheet and go, oh, this is more than 7 years. File retention plan. That is if they have a file retention plan. But it's still not going to go up.
Yeah.
We're not adding to it. So I can send you a list of how many boxes you've got. You can look and see, okay, is it, next year we'll be getting rid of 2016 or 2017. I'll have to look. 23, 22, 21, 20, 19, 18, 17. We'll be getting rid of 2016's boxes. So if you've got something on your list that's 2016, you can take it off. Then you figure out it's $1.50 a box.
So I just put no increase due to digital storage. Because
Yes.
we're not adding boxes.
Yeah, and,
Yeah.
and again, this is a chance for you to brag on our operations. No increase due to digital storage that management company has set up to save money or something to that effect.
That's
so that way,
enough.
that way you make them realize that it's something we've done to help them.
So license and permits, car and delay, I know that that's for their boiler. We didn't have an inspection this year because I think it's every 2 years. So I'm just gonna leave that there. But I don't know. So they don't really send people to the attorney very often. We had one that went to the attorney.
It should be a wash account anyway, shouldn't it?
It is, but we also had Charles Posey where some of it they wrote off because of his situation. So I'm just gonna leave that at 160 because it's not an increase, but there wasn't really.
It gives them a little bit of
Yeah.
fluff if they have a question about something. Your legal fees shouldn't be much because anything, unless they're dealing with, like Wentworth dealing with that house painting,
Mhm.
that can't be billed back to the owner right now.
No.
And, you know, so their legal fees will be something because they've got an ongoing issue. But most of the time we're looking at, you wanna give them a little bit of fluff for a legal fee in case something comes up like that. But most gets washed out because the owner has to pick up the expense when it's delinquency.
This is also a category that if you have something budgeted and you need to adjust your budget, this is usually a place you can take it out of.
But like, you don't always want to. Like, I know that. So like when I did Westwood's budget, because theirs is June, July, so theirs is already done. I had to go in and they have a whole rework of their docs. So I had to be like, wait, what did y'all agree with the attorney? How much is he billing y'all for this? And they're like, oh, 5,000, we've paid this much. So I had to go in and make sure I included the rest of that in the budget because I knew
Again,
it was coming.
that you know in your properties and not just go on historical data.
Okay.
So management fees, you can talk to John to see if there's going to be an increase. I know Carndelly had an increase last year. So
Most of them did, a lot of them did.
As a rule of thumb, y'all should know that unless the economy goes wackadoodles, we are about 5 years on increases. Okay, so you can kind of look at your last amendment that you had.
They don't have copies of them because you haven't had me post them.
That's true. Or talk to Cherry and I.
Yeah.
I know where the list is too, so I know to go look at his desk.
There's that.
But so I know there's no increase expected, so I'm just gonna leave that there. And then their audit, we just did it, so it will be there next year.
Okay, and if you've got a condo that does not do an audit, you need to budget for audits. I have found out, and I don't know how I ever missed this, quite honestly, but there's a state law that says condominiums must do an annual audit.
So if you've added it, John, you need to look up the number on that. So if you add it, you can reference that state law.
So theirs is already included because they know that they need to do it every year. So I hit save to make sure my totals were updated. One line item that I know is not on here that I know they will probably need is the oversight fees. But that's something that you do after you've done your repairs and maintenance. So just remember that that's something you might have to go back and change.
Yeah, if you have a high ticket dollar on repair and maintenance, you got budget for the oversight fee too.
Which would be like Hager Square if we did the
Yes.
dredging.
Yes. So you'll do
I like
that
when you
line
say
item. She's
I'm
giving up
trying
hope, I
not-
think.
No, I'm trying to
You
be
want
positive, but I'm trying not to be too positive.
Okay.
So insurance expenses, insurance is what it is. Look at your contract and see what you're paying. But you can always go to the report and see. It is a little wonky, so this is one of those areas you might need to look and see because some of them are being billed as a commercial package when that's not how we budgeted it.
And you need to change your budget to the way it's being billed. Because I pay real close attention to those billings when they come in to see what does it say, what type of insurance is it. So like D&O, if you only build budgeted in the past for everything to go to commercial package, but I see an invoice that's coded to D&O, that's what I'm gonna code it to. So you may have to really look at your budgets to see what you need to reevaluate on the insurance.
And certain groups are prone to package pricing and certain ones are prone to breakouts. State Farm will do a package on everything except D&O. Whereas if you get something from Symphony, odds are there's a line for each item.
So it looks like State Farm is also billing separately the crime and fidelity.
Interesting, okay, I didn't know they did that.
So that's something that I have changed. So I know that their crime and fidelity is 4706. So, but I don't have a GL account for that. So I need to.
And it's in there, so you should be able to pull it.
But one fancy thing, actually, I'm not gonna do it this way. So like in this situation, especially with insurance, this is where I know a lot of mine will come up because I know I have messed up them in the past. If you scroll down to the bottom of your budget, non-budgeted GLs with activity. So this means you didn't include it in your budget, but people have been coding things to it.
Oh, okay.
Nice.
So Hilda's coding something
Right.
that,
But you didn't have it in the budget.
So you can just
And-
add that to your budget.
So I can just click here and say, oh, I want this to be $48 a month. $574.
Okay. When you get done with that, I got a question.
Now, will that automatically pop it up into the
Mhm.
top?
Mhm.
Okay,
Once you
cool.
sit.
I can't spell separate. I never have been able to. Just for the record. So I've added that, so I'm going to save changes. And in a minute, when I
See, it popped it up.
it moves it.
So now it's part up there with the line items.
Neat.
I really like this section.
Yeah, that's nice.
Also,
There's a-
make sure you didn't miss anything.
Right, and this is one of those things I was talking about. Like, I
This
know
is awesome.
I've missed things with Excel because it wasn't in my Excel. So then when I'm going back to Excel, it's still not there. This shows you what you might have missed.
That's awesome.
Okay, now I want you to go back up to the audit number real quick.
Use.
Where are we at? Are you there? Okay, go over to the months.
Oh yeah, that's a valid.
That's a good one to do it with
I was
too.
gonna ask that question. So.
It is in here separate, because it's saved from a previous year.
Oh, okay.
But had I added that GL, I would have needed to go in and type in a specific month.
Because otherwise, January, February, March, April, you're gonna always be with a variance on your budget. If it only happens one time a year, put it in the month it happens. So that because otherwise it's gonna divide it out by 12 and you're always gonna be off on your variance
And
report.
seriously, keep an eye on when those things happen.
So like this one is budgeted for May, and honestly, you could probably put it.
I'd put it in July. We were a little slower this year for some reason, I don't know why. But we were really slow the year before.
Taxes are almost always done in March.
Yeah, if you're doing taxes, that's March. But audits are always
February.
Yeah.
The reason for trying to get them in the right month is just one less thing for you have to do a variance explanation on. It doesn't affect the overall budget, but it affects you down the road.
So,
okay. So your insurance, you know, you're looking at.
well, yes. 13.71. But this is another one that was like, it's not.
Actually, you took what we were currently billing, right?
Yes.
When you get to insurance, don't average it out 19 months. Take what the last billing you had.
Because it
Yeah.
probably went up. So you don't want to include 2022.
And then you have it too low.
So we
How
just
many of y'all
use
did
the-
not have an increase on your insurance this year?
I'm pretty sure all of mine increased.
all mine in.
My point.
So if you're taking and trying to budget, there are certain things, kind of like the storage. You're not going to take and average it. It's an actual number. We know how many boxes we have over there. That's what it's going to be. Your insurance is going to be, actually, it will increase again next year in the middle of the year whenever your insurance renews. But you don't want to take 19 months because a year ago it was less than it was now. Take the number now, and if you want to, you can take when it renews and add another $100 to it or whatever. But yeah, you got to remember
As
the
an
insurance
example,
take the actual number now. Write that down.
When I do the one with the building that I'm reconstructing, I've got to change their insurance. And it's gonna be a radical change. Any property you've had that's had a lot of claims, you need to change, you need to figure about a 20% increase on their insurance.
Which would be Stutz. They haven't. They just did theirs, didn't they?
Anybody that's had a claim should get it,
Stats?
you should plan an
Yeah,
insurance.
Centerpoint?
Centerpoint just did theirs.
Anybody that has a claim in the last year, you should plan an
An
increase
increase.
on their budget.
Yeah, some
Even if it
point.
didn't go through?
If anyone who's had a claim,
Okay.
Yeah, because as
It's
soon as they get the phone call,
they will make a note on there that this was an attempted claim.
Mm-hmm.
Even though it didn't pay out, it was still a hit. This is somebody to be an eye for. Let's raise their increase.
Yeah.
Let's increase them.
It was Ron calling every time.
Right.
just gotta increase it.
So, but because I added the commercial package, since that's what's being billed to, I need to take out my property, cause that needs to be 0.
Should not be in both places, good
Right.
point, good point.
So, and again, save. So now that's 0, but there's my insurance, you can see how it adjusted. But you can also see where both the commercial and the crime moved from that non-budgeted GL account up to where it's supposed to be once we saved it. This is probably my favorite part, because I really liked that about trustworthy budget. So then we have our lovely utilities, which are gonna be
What?
bonkers.
I was gonna say, do we have a percentage we want them to increase?
Yeah, how much do you want us to increase utilities?
I have not heard anything from the PUC this year, so anytime I don't hear anything, I plan 5%.
I think I did Westwood at 10, but that's okay.
It's a 5%, right?
You may want to go as high as 10 on the water, because we are in.
10% high, 10% of the water?
Yeah,
Increase them more.
because a lot of municipalities are behind the curve on billing for water. Unless you got some places that got their own private well.
Any of our properties have that?
I've
But
got
Fairville Farms does.
Oh, it's 5%.
Mm-hmm. 5%.
and Victory has one as well, but they still have other water as well.
Okay.
So I took the utilities from 2022, added them to the utilities we paid for 2023, divided by 18 to get my average, multiply that by 12, and now I'm gonna add my 5% for electricity. And then, oh, I don't know why I did that, times 12. So my annual is 28,419. Car and delay is a little different because they do bill back, so I'm gonna leave that number the same, because we're just gonna bill it back anyway. So it's a wash on theirs, basically.
It's a wash, it's a slow wash, but it's a wash.
And then gas. I'm not typing. I don't know why I'm doing that. 29.88 plus. Their gas was a lot higher so far this year.
You have to look to see if there was something that caused that. Did we have a super hard freeze? Did we have a longer cold period? You know, what's our expectation? What have you heard from the weather people of what you're expecting for next year? You know, are we going to be into an El Nino situation where it's not that bad? And you know, you've got to. This is part of why when people ask us about when we start budgets, I say we never stop doing budgets.
Those thirds based on history.
Now, car and delay bills back electricity and gas, they do not bill back water.
Correct.
So now she can take her electricity and gas, add them together.
Now, are you gonna mention that you increased it by the 5%?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
And she can go up and put her income number in.
After I hit save.
Because remember, she's got utility reimbursement.
This is 136.
She's taken those two numbers, added them together.
So you gotta change that one too.
Mm-hmm. Because there's
It's like you're on
Example.
West Haven, the insurance assessment.
Mm-hmm.
As soon as you put in your insurance number, you go up and put the same number in the assessments.
but I can put the 5%.
Somebody else does assessments too. Capana Village.
Yeah, it does an insurance assessment. That's right.
Mm-hmm.
So make sure that you include that in your budget.
Just so they know that they are getting that money back. Telephone is another one of those things you can look. You don't need to average it out. Just go look at the bill, see what you're paying. Well, and there's just one case, so I'd say that, but maybe not. Oh, because they have two different things going on in here, and they should not. So this is one of those things I need to adjust.
Why do they have two different things?
Because they have the gate service and the phone service. So do you want us to separate them, or do you want us to keep them together?
Where do they have a phone service at?
I don't know. It says AT&T service period.
Is that
It's on the internet.
Oh, yeah.
internet? Yeah.
No, it should stay together.
That's just like Fiji.
Is that how theirs is too?
So y'all do, when I have a bill and it's the internet, go ahead and bill that to the telephone account number.
Yeah.
Right.
So we don't have an internet account number.
Mm-hmm.
I just wanna make sure I was doing it right,
But like this one's too low because when I add those two numbers together and then multiply by 12, it's 1992. So that's
And keep an eye on that with your properties. AT&T, if they are on an old copper line, they're trying to get them off of it. So they are doing stupid things with their pricing.
Yeah, there was one property.
So you can sound, yeah, so you can sound like you know what you're talking about. It's called the POTS line transfer. POTS, POTS line. It's when you're on the old copper, and they're trying to transfer you over, and it may be time for you to start looking at digital. I've got a
3930
property.
was one that did it
Mhm,
last
they
year
did.
when we did our.
We took them off of the POTS line and put them onto a digital at 3930, and their cellular bill went down. Their phone bill went down to $40 from $600.
Yeah. And it popped up at 600 a month, and it was like, what the heck?
Because AT&T is doubling their prices trying to get you off the POTS lines.
Is that what they did here?
Mm-hmm.
Did it make your bill go down?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, that's good.
And I'm pulling that trigger at a new property we pulled on out by the lake. This month, I'm gonna pull that trigger there and decrease all that as well.
so for their trash, I know that they increased the gas reimbursement on part of their bills, so I had to increase the budgeted amount. And then my dates got changed because I was looking for the current budget, so I need to go back to December. My stomach is making noises. So
Yeah, and actually, while you're working on it, you could basically, if you've got your budget up on one screen, you pull up your reports on another screen, you can actually duplicate the tab and have the two reports so you can flip back
Yes.
and forth.
Can you open the reports twice? I was just wondering that.
if you have them on two separate screens, you can.
Mhm.
You cannot do it on the same screen because it overrides it.
Okay.
But you also don't necessarily have to unless you need to look at something specific for that year, because you still have your totals for this year here.
Right.
Okay.
So most of the time I've been keeping this tab on December and then just using the total
Gotcha.
from here.
Until you start to, until
Until
you
you
have
get
to
down to
arrow
the-
down
yeah.
and look at an item to see what it
Right.
was.
But we need to
What were you on?
water. Plus 5%. So their water went up a lot.
Mhm.
What's their actual look like right now?
15,000. So I mean that's about right. That's halfway through the year. 29,826.
And see, this is one of those ones where you as the manager, you have to sit there and go, okay, so we're 15 for the year. That doubled up for half a year. That's going to be 30 grand. 31 is what that's looking like. Is 29 really the right number?
I know that they had a massive leak, so I'm gonna, or they've had 3. So I'm gonna assume that some of that water was due to the loss there, and that maybe 29 will keep us a conservative where we need to be at, because we had a lot of plumbing repairs. But you can always tell if you haven't saved in a while, because these little black tabs mean that you've changed something that hasn't saved. So I'm gonna save because I don't want to lose it.
Yeah, 'cause you've changed quite a bit and you don't want to lose that.
So now you can see all my little black tabbies went away, which means this is what's the most
So
recent
in
saved.
doing budgets, be like Jesus.
Save.
Jesus saves. Old computer joke, by the way.
So it looks like we had money budgeted for alarm service, but it wasn't being anything billed. I think that's the gates from last year. But I can double check by going down to see if there's anything else in my unused GLs that might explain that.
Might have been your access gates,
That's what I was
the walkthroughs.
No, it was I had split out the AT&T and the phone line last year. So I can put that back to 0, cause I added them into the other side.
Yeah, if you're taking out something, explain why you're taking it out too.
Landscaping, you can go off of what you've actually done, because these are contracted amounts, so go off your contract unless you know there's an increase coming. If you renew your contract in January, then ask what the increase is gonna be. If you renew your contract in October, you can add just a little bit, but you're pretty safe for the majority of the year.
Do not average out 19 months on a contract. Go look at the last contract. Okay?
But again, if your contract expires in January, you might wanna reach out to your landscaper and say,
Are we expecting any change?
hey, am I expecting a change, cause I need to add that in the budget.
She reminds me, I gotta give you Black Diamond's contracts.
So landscaping, they're at $3.99.
Who do they pay?
Superior. I don't think Superior is gonna go up on them. Superior likes just having little random jobs in Uptown to do.
If they keep enough small jobs in Uptown, it keeps them busy in Uptown,
Mm-hmm.
and they don't have a whole lot of windshield time.
So $3.99 times 12. I expected an increase last year and then we didn't get it, which is why I budgeted more.
Based on current contract.
Same with pest control. Another fun thing, don't try and hit like back or escape on when you're looking at this report. If you've clicked on it, you have to click this little arrow or it restarts your whole thing. It's very annoying. I've done it many times. So pest control, 155, and there's just quarterly. So this is one of those things that I can, instead of doing divide by 12, I can go put on the specific months.
And please do.
That way it doesn't look funny. So I can go over here and say 155.
And those individual months will add up and total, give her a total right there.
So you can
Okay,
see where my
so-
total adjusted is over here.
Okay.
You can see how doing the notes as you go will make your narrative not necessary. And it'll make the explanations even better because on the narrative, we were just hitting what we thought the high points were.
Right, and
They
this
can look at each line and see.
line
what it's
item,
for.
you can see.
And then if they have a question, they can ask specifically on that
So
line.
I'm expecting this to make our budgeting season discussions with our boards a lot easier.
Now, my question is, with Scott doing his like he does, how am I gonna put in?
Do it anyways and send it to him.
No, you need, if he's provided you with a budget, enter his budget.
Yeah.
Then go back and compare it to what where we stand, and you
then
might,
my lines in?
and put your lines in and say, you know, Scott, I'm showing this, do we need to adjust your budget by this amount, or do you wanna leave it?
You
You
still
still-
have to do a budget and get it to him though.
Right, but
Don't
you,
wait on him.
Well, he's already sent me one.
if he's already sent it, then we enter what he sent,
Mhm.
then review it and see if there's things that you go, cause like his insurance is never right,
Mhm.
but he goes, okay, whatever. And, but review it based as if you were doing it,
Okay.
of reviewing his numbers. Don't say, Scott, you're wrong, but say, Scott, you know, my calculations show this, do we wanna change this number, or do you wanna leave it where it's at?
We are required by contract to give him a budget even if he gives us one.
So repairs and maintenance is gonna be where you have to bounce between QuickBooks and here a lot more. Because you're going to see what some of your bigger items were. So for example, we budgeted $69.60 last year, but we only spent $600. So that's not, it's not a lot. But you can see on, I use this one. When we pulled the data from QuickBooks, when we switched to Vantaca, it's only gonna show you the starting total. It's not gonna give you the specific line item like it did on everything else that we've looked at. So you can see common areas $4.99. I don't know what that was because we were just entering the total amount when we started with Vantaca. So that's why I have to go look at QuickBooks and see what we spent here. And the same thing, you can double click on it and just see what it was. Most of theirs are going to be silly little things. So
Also remember, especially on like a line item like that, if you had planned a project that didn't get done, you could move that project to the next year. Village of Indian Creek for years has wanted to add another light pole down on the other end. So I put $15,000 a year, into their budget to be able to do that, or whatever it was, the cost of it. That probably should be looked at because the cost of solar light poles has come way down.
So what about like the lake management that's in Hager Square that we don't use, that hasn't been used?
You did, take it out if we're not using it.
But that's
Are
for
you
the
planning on it?
dredging, that's what you had said was
Oh, well,
No,
you-
that's
putting it
not,
in there for
that's not for the
dredging.
dredging,
That
the
would be
dredging
where
was a
you-
big project.
That's where you would code it once you actually do the deal, but
No, he
Yes.
just put it in there for,
trying to build up money for when we need
Yeah.
it later. No, you can work at that direction, but again, if you've got a project that you were planning for this year that you didn't do,
dredging,
move it forward,
okay.
okay? And that way you can,
But you don't
justify your
necessarily
expenses.
use the lake management contract for the dredging, cause the dredging's
Right.
gonna be a hell of a
no,
lot more.
lake management, repair and maintenance versus contract.
Right,
Because you can have a lake management contract. I've got it, Johnson Place is gonna have it, because they have 6 lakes.
that's fun. Okay, but, so perfect example, this is exterior repair at Car and Delay. Last year we spent $68,000.
What are the odds that's gonna happen this year?
Right, but we also, if I don't go look at QuickBooks, I won't know where 67 of that went. Because
Isn't that the one that did the roof?
that's not on a roof, that's down
That's
the
roof,
roofs.
it's not
Oh, I
building.
know.
But this would be their painting and their
Oh.
repairs to the wood outside. But,
How much of that was that?
right, if I don't know that off the top of my head, then that's why you have to go look at QuickBooks to see exactly where you are. Except I don't know how to go, can I hit the back face on here?
close that. It'll take you back to the statement, I think.
Cancel. See, this is what happens when we don't play QuickBooks for a while.
No, close that.
Close that, the X.
Yeah, and it'll take you back to the report.
'Cause
Where
you'll-
you don't wanna close it in Vantaca,
Yeah,
you
won't
do
want to close
here.
it in here. So, but I can double click on the exterior repair and see 56,000 of that was painting.
So your number really that you're working with is 11.
Right. And they have 13. Drop it down to 11 since we don't expect any major repairs. And I'll add notes here in a second, just because I'm trying to move forward, since y'all are staring at me doing the budget.
Well, no, that's okay.
Door
And
one.
honestly, if you're adding notes, then if the board looks at it, goes, but we wanna do this.
Mm-hmm.
That's where, if it's not in your notes, then they're going, oh, okay, well then we need to go add that number and see where we stand. You're gonna be playing with this quite a bit with them.
Yeah, see, well, one I've gotta worry about with, on where we got the rebuild going on, is I'm gonna have almost no maintenance on that first building, but the rest of the community is gonna want the new looking fixtures.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm gonna have to go plan, can we afford to replace all the fixtures on the property? And put that into the budget. This is where you as the manager have to be that proactive thinker. Let the board make you take it out.
But even at that, with the notes in it, they're seeing what you're planning, cause the board may have something in mind too. Terra Place will definitely have some things in mind that Ashley won't.
I'm so sorry for you, and I feel sorry for you on that one.
But so like this one, I only budgeted 120 for fences, gates, and walls, but we've spent 470 this year.
Figuring
So
you
what
guys
happened?
could-
Somebody needs to go find out why.
That was somebody's patio fence, I think.
Yeah, I think so too.
And if you had one, is the likelihood of having another? Again, this is your job as a manager to try to think about these things proactively.
What, the age of the property and so forth.
Oh,
what you-
see, but again, this one is something that probably won't come up again, honestly, because we did that whole painting and wood repair, and then they removed a whole bunch of really old dead plants. They were covering some more wood repair because they were giant bushes. So then we had to go back and repair the lower part of the fence again. Not expecting that, so I can probably leave that where it was. Because I don't expect us to have to worry about that.
Just-
Yeah.
I just don't want it to go away for you.
Foundation and drainage, they always put money here and then we don't end up. I am concerned about their foundation, so I always try to budget a little money in foundation and drainage because it's coming.
That's the job of the manager. And if you can get away with only $4,000 worth of foundation work, that would be on a property like that.
And
that's
it probably won't, but this is one of those categories that they tend to take from whenever they're looking at the budget, like, oh, we haven't done any repairs here. We'll just hold off on that. Their big thing in their mind is the roofs and the parking lot. But I know that. I'm still gonna put the 4,000. They'll probably take it back out
Until their floors fall out from under them.
until Nancy finally assaults Dawn in the parking lot or something. So again, same thing. I only budgeted $1,200 in landscaping, but they did $8,400 worth of planting. That was actually left over from the special assessment that was billed last year. So I already knew that was coming out, but I also know that we're not gonna likely do another $8,500 worth of planting. So I'm gonna leave that alone. Ooh, didn't mean to hit the one a whole bunch of times. However, their plumbing repairs are always a point of concern. So if we look at historical data just for this year,
Why do they have so many plumbing companies?
because they have gigantic trees that they refuse to address.
Yeah, they need to get rid
Go
of
in there
all.
and can destroy that
They
farm.
have this nice little French garden that's like really.
In the property.
Oh, in the middle of the.
The community's also
Forgot about that part.
70 years old.
So yeah, so they had $1,300 in plumbing. That one was only $650. That one was nice. $9,500 in plumbing, and that was for this year. So we can go to QuickBooks and see what we had last year to see if okay, well maybe that was just like a one-off.
Yeah, no.
It wasn't.
It was not a one-off.
No.
Darn.
So we have 7,000, we have 16. So we probably need to budget some money. So it's not like I can take anything really out of that. So I'm gonna go ahead and take the totals from both, but I am gonna make sure I get my total for everything by going to all of 2022.
Yeah, that's a good point. Don't use the number out of QuickBooks because it's
Right.
missing 2 months.
I wanna make sure I get all of it. So I can go down to plumbing and see that last year we spent $22,000. Plus, where's my tab go? The 17 that we've spent this year. Divided by 18. So probably need to increase their plumbing budget a little bit.
A little bit.
That's a plumbing overhaul.
But this is also what I was talking about earlier with their water bill. Ideally, we won't have $7,000 plumbing leaks that are just leaking water under the building, so their water bill wouldn't be as high. HVAC, we did increase it more this year, and then they didn't need as many other repairs. But this is one of those things that they are always repairing their boiler or their chiller, one of the two. So I'm not gonna touch that $8,500 because there's a good chance we're only halfway through the year, we might still need it. But I do know that they are wanting to do a whole bunch of repairs on their roof in the next year. We already got the bid for that. So even though I could look at historical data, it's gonna be all askew because we replaced the flat roof and this is gonna be for the pitched roof.
So notice she's using a bid number.
Yes.
But she already has the bid in file. Remember how on some of y'all's properties, I asked y'all to go and get some bids?
Mhm.
It's cause we're planning for next year. Even if you get the bid in June, you're still planning for next year.
Right.
Okay?
And a lot of the vendors, they know that's what we're doing. And that's what I told Daniel when I had him go look at the roof. I said, hey, we're trying to assess the state of this roof and see if it's something we need to be worried about like in the next year, or if we've got a couple. Can you, when you have a chance, go look at it. So I was letting him know, like, this is not
I'm
The
not
job
gonna
is gonna
do
be
it
done
next
right now.
week.
I'm
but-
not doing it right now, but I need to know what's going on. And then he looked at it and said, you can get another 3 to 5 years out of it if we make these suggested repairs.
And that's the important thing about having a good vendor that you can trust.
Mm-hmm.
And we all have different ones that we like for different things, okay? You know, so if you can get one that will say, yeah, we can do this and get you another 3 to 5 years out of this deal, instead of saying, oh yeah, let's replace the roof, or let's replace all the fences on the whole property, or whatever that thing might be, that's a valuable vendor for you. Interestingly enough, a lot of times they'll only do that for you, they won't do that for anybody else.
But like I said, that also being upfront with your vendors so that they don't feel like they're being taken advantage of either. Like, hey, I'm using this for budgeting purposes. I need to know, can I get the life of this? And then when he's honest with me, I'm more likely to be honest. I'm more likely to recommend him when the board's like, okay, we want to go ahead and do these roof repairs. Okay, well, Daniel already did the assessment for us, so let's call him.
Let's take care of the guy that took care of us.
But same thing, like their sprinkler system, they've only spent $469 so far this year. But when I looked at the historical numbers for last year, it was almost $5,000. But that's because they did a whole overhaul. Well, hopefully we don't have to do a whole overhaul again. So I'm not gonna budget $5,000. I'm gonna leave it at the $850 that it was, or the $480. I mean, $850. I think it's $850. I just moved the button. So they will hopefully, barring any catastrophic event in the next 2 months, be done paying off their chiller in September.
This year,
Yes.
congratulations.
You're looking at me funny, like you don't.
I think they paid it off this month.
Was it this month? I thought it was September.
I think it was
this.
this month. That's why I was looking at you funny. Is 'cause
Either
I
way.
did it, yeah.
Either way, I'm not putting it in the budget next year.
No interest, yay. And she's capitalizing this, this is important.
Charlie's very excited about it. He talks about it every time we talk about the budget. And then, and I messed up, and I will admit that I messed up. I should have done this at the very beginning. I did not adjust our reserved contribution based on my adjustment to the income.
And it's not just it's assessments.
Right.
It doesn't have to be total income. It's assessments.
So I increased their assessments, the regular assessments, to 154, and we have to contribute 10% in the budget. So I should be contributing at least $15,431, and I should have done that at the beginning.
I thought about it as you were working through, and I went, I shall catch it in a minute.
Mhm.
I will.
Why is she doing that?
Cause it's
It's in their docs, is it?
No.
Oh, no, it's state law,
no,
right?
it's not state law for condos yet.
Condos, yeah, for,
It's for
What?
financing
Fin-
purposes.
oh, I thought it was part of a,
But you cannot, somebody cannot get a loan without showing that it's budgeted. So,
So when
FHA,
you're selling a condo, FHA is gonna want 10%.
FHA, you gotta remember, when you're trying to get FHA financing in the condominium community, there are 3 major things they look for. Fidelity coverage. Do they have fidelity coverage as the board? Even though they don't touch the money, they still want them to have the coverage, okay? Do they have a planned budget of 10% of their dues going into their budget? Notice I stressed the word planned, and I'll come back to that. And then the third one is their leasing percentage their owner occupancy less
Greater.
greater than 50%. You know,
they
leasing has
don't
to be
want the
less than 50%.
property to be,
Majority rentals.
Yeah, I found a lender recently that they wanted it to be less than 30%.
Really?
That lender didn't get the deal done. But the reason why I said planned on the budget, which is where Ashley's at, is FHA is really goofy.
They don't care if you actually do it.
They don't care if you actually fund it, they just want to show that you're planning to.
But I guarantee you, when I see your budget in January, I will
Pretend
go,
like it's gonna.
listen guys, this is important. When I see your budget in January and I see how much is supposed to go into reserves each month, I will go in and set up a automatic transfer that happens every month.
Vantaca allows her to do that.
So I will not go back and look at it again, and it will go into the reserve account. If you end up short on money, you're gonna have to have me pull it back out of the reserve account.
And I think that's why FHA doesn't care if you're funding it, because they're expecting you're gonna pull from it at some point.
But yeah,
So
so
once he is planned.
so don't
So we
tell
need to
your
plan on
wait,
reserve
don't tell your
account.
board, oh well, we don't have to necessarily. It will get transferred every month. Y'all will have to go back and pull it back out if you need to.
So-
That basically is your first expense on the property every month
Yeah, because I do
It's
them
in
first.
reserves.
is gonna go to reserves. They're paying themselves first every month.
But, so up until this point, so like when we get to the reserve item, this is everything that was on the budget that was submitted and put into Vantaca last year. So all of these things down here are the things that we have coded to in the last 6 months that were not included in your budget originally. So you need to review each of these items and see if it was just like a one-off weird thing, or if it's something that you should be budgeting for and you weren't. So, like in my case, bank services. Well, there's a good chance we're gonna have bank service charges.
How much is it?
Shouldn't.
42. They had NSFs.
She got billed back. That should have been a wash.
No, they had some issues
They
with
had
that.
some weird ones.
Well, I don't think you
They
would.
got hit with charges.
Yeah, I don't think you need to put bank charges in there because usually bank charges
Should be
With-
zero.
wouldn't actually they'll probably get an
I
income.
put it in this stuff.
When an owner NSFs a check is the only time we get a bank charge, typically, unless for some reason the association bounces checks, and that was such a weird. That was because of the other.
Oh yeah, I had that.
Yeah. So when association gets a bank charge, it's because an owner has NSF'd a check. The typical charge has been $10. Lately, they're back and forth on whether it's $10 or $15, and I'm not sure if it's because maybe they have a payment returned on a charge card or what. What makes up the difference of why a bank charges us 10 or the bank charges us 15? We are currently charging, because of the 15 showing up all of a sudden, we are currently charging the homeowner back 15 for any NSF, which is not a big deal because then the property, if it's 10, they get a $5 profit on it, which is not unusual for somebody to charge an NSF fee.
Mhm.
We don't charge any other NSF fees for them bouncing.
Most
So I wouldn't budget bank service
most companies
charges.
will charge $35 now on return fees.
Yeah, so,
Return charge checks.
so I wouldn't even budget anything there. They may end up with a little bit of money coming back to them, but it should be a wash if there's a charge.
But Carondelet, in the past, they had always done their meeting at La Madeleine and it was free. They used a free room. In 2023, La Madeleine disappeared. So then we had to pay to rent out a unit or a place to hold their annual meeting. So that was not budgeted last year, but that is something that I need to consider for this coming year. So I should probably go ahead and add that in of
I do like this section too. I forgot about
I love this.
definitely my favorite part. Same thing with management fees. Didn't have any of the management fees budgeted last year.
the oversight fees.
Oversight fees. But if I know there's a big project, then I need to budget money there.
You have the roof thing that you just talked about.
Right. We have, but it's only 5,000, so it's right there on the line, so I can budget the 10% of that. But that's really the only big project that they're expecting.
If you put something in the budget that's a big
Right.
project item, you need to add something to
Right.
management fee other.
So. And it's not a bad thing to budget anyway, because honestly, they'll probably end up with a plumbing leak that's over $5,000 at some point. And bad debt expense, again, knowing your properties in this situation, I don't expect them to have bad debt again next year. They wrote this off for an owner because she paid one day after their special assessment discount deal. So they let her have it back. So I don't expect that to happen again. Interest expense, same thing. That would be for the chiller. Don't expect that to be this year because we paid off the chiller. And then the gate contract, this is where I need to look and see if this covers everything or if this was repairs that I need to add in that I didn't have included. So I can still look at this one under contract. Maybe I can find it. No, because I'm in the wrong year. So for gate contract, had to order remotes. Well, I don't expect us to have to order remotes every year. That was honestly the first time I've had to order remotes in like 4 or 5 years, so I'm not gonna budget that. And you don't necessarily have to put a reason on these ones if you're not using them, because when we export it in a minute, we're gonna take them off. Because we don't need to explain why they're there. Same thing with irrigation. They had an irrigation repair done outside the contract, but I've already included that in the sprinkler repairs, so I don't need to include that here. However, I do know that they want to do a lot of parking lot repairs next year. I don't have any bids on this yet. So this is something that I would either have to ask John if he has any idea about how much it would take to restripe their parking lot, or go off of what I know from restriping to replace or somewhere else. What he's thinking. I can tell by his face.
In something like this, if you know you've done it on a property in the past, and if you got your QuickBooks open, you can go into QuickBooks, change your, close that, cause that's a detail on one account. You could go into parking lot repairs or whatever.
Yeah, do bar.
Are you talking about for this property?
For any property. You just pick one, the exterior repairs.
What are you doing?
And you can change that start date to like some crazy number, like 2000.
If you've done it on that property
If you know
before.
you've done it on that property before, and you can find where you might have paid Stone Creations
I don't know what I just did.
for that wall work that they did, right? So I'm we're gonna have to do 2 more walls, so, well, we only paid them for $150 for a tugboat repair, or whatever. You can go back, you don't have to remember, there's a $1,700 repair. What was that for? Oh, that's when they did some soffit work. You know, you can do that kind of stuff on those one-offs that are coming up. Does that make sense? But it's also only works if you remember, like, if you know you used AA Tiger Stripe to restripe the parking lot, you can go back and look and say, oh, 8 years ago we did this for $1,900. We can probably budget this to be, you know, $2,500 this time, and we can work with it in a good number.
I put estimate there, and if you're trying to get it done, I'd be making notes and then going, okay, I gotta do some more research on this one.
Does that make sense?
Um,
And the only reason you gotta go into QuickBooks is because that's where the historical data is. Eventually, we'll get enough historical into Vantaca and you won't have to do that.
they have to replace lights all the time. I don't know why that line item wasn't budgeted. So we're gonna make sure it's included. And so now when I save it, these things will
Up to the top.
pop up where they're supposed to go.
Populate up there.
Okay, so now that shrinks that category. Now, fun part, and the other reason you want to hit save, because it messed me up when I was doing Rushwood and I didn't, because it was easy, and then I thought my numbers were all wonky. It shows you down here, I am at a severe deficit, as always with Carandale. So even though I increased their dues to the 20% we had talked about, this is why I left the special assessment kind of a blank item pending, because they knew that there was possibility of more that would need to come. Because of some repairs that they.
Do you see where her deficit is? Do y'all see that?
Yeah,
14.
14.
She's losing 14 grand for the year.
With all of her expenses listed and her income listed, and hers is pretty detailed at this point.
So, I know Carandale is okay with getting the deficit budget, because we've done this the last 2 years, then they'll go through and, like I said, they'll pick and pull things apart and take stuff back out. They'll probably take out the foundation. They'll probably adjust the plumbing. They'll probably do this until we get to 0, and then they'll worry about a special assessment later, because this is how they like to do things. But I still need to get this information.
So
To
they'll
them.
know that that's a possible expense coming up.
Right. But I still need to get all this information to them, because right now, this is just in Vantaca.
Okay, so this, but wait a minute, this is where we need to stop and say, what is our company process gonna be? Because Ashley had us review Russwood's, cause it was the first time she did it. So we gotta figure out what the process
We
is.
already talked about it, unless we changed it. So, I think I'm done with my budget. As far as, yes. Yeah, I had to go look at my notes to make sure I did everything I was supposed to go back and do. I think I'm done with my budget. But, 2 things. Board hasn't seen it. John hasn't seen it. Cherry doesn't have to see it anymore.
I don't have to see it, I love it.
Because all she was doing before is checking math. And guess who checks our math now? So, we have like 2 more people that still have to review this before we can click the official button. Because we're still not touching that button yet. So, I then have to go in and create a task under action items. New action item. And I want this to be a managing agent task.
Y'all don't use those very often, but we do. This is basically saying upper management's looking at it. So if John doesn't look at it, I might look at it or whatever.
It's manager agent.
Managing agent.
agent task.
And you can see where I've done it before. Review, car and delay, 2024, proposed budget.
You might want to change the
Vantaca.
association at the top.
Oh, yes.
Why didn't do it there? Citizen.
Because it likes to just
It just
randomly
does that
go.
from time to time.
So I listed review 2024 proposed budget in Vantaca. And then dates and assignments. You are going to do the date for 10 days later. He has 10 days to look at it before you can start bugging him.
Don't come bug me on day 8. But don't also give me 19 budgets on that I'm supposed to look at in 10 days.
I was getting him that way, yes.
Yeah.
And you need to make sure that you assign it to him.
There are 4 people that could go to.
Right. And I don't want to review my own budget. So it needs to go to John. And then update.
Now, do we send them all to John or do we send them to
They
you?
all go to John.
Everybody to
Now,
John?
if for some reason John ends up going out of town or whatever, we see those managing agent
I
tasks.
can still see it.
Ashley can look at it, I can look at it, Nabai can look at it. Those are the 4 people that are listed under that.
Okay.
Because those are typically more corporate transaction things that
Like
are
you
happening.
guys don't see the managing agent task for me to go in and change the registered agent on a new client. You don't
So-
see that task,
No.
For example,
but we do.
on my little dashboard, which is very busy right now, please ignore the rest of it, I have all of the managing agent tasks for everyone. So this task has been created to upload the ARCs, because that's one of those things that I do for the new properties that we take on. But I can still go to the all action items and see everyone's managing agent items, but still assign it to him so that it pops up on his dashboard. Now, if
But he didn't use his dashboard at
he
all.
doesn't,
So now it's saved, it's sitting out there.
so it's there. You don't have to send it to him. You don't have to print it or anything yet. You're waiting for him to send you a message back saying budget approved.
So you can close the window and
Mhm.
not worry
It's
about
gone.
it. It's stuck.
I
You,
just-
as long as you were saving it as you went along, it's
As long
there.
as you don't got any
Okay.
little black triangles in the corners, you're good.
Okay.
But we're going to assume that he has reviewed this budget.
And in this case like this, what you would get back from me would be advice.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, because I don't know your property as well as you know your property.
That's fair.
That's the way it should be.
But
right?
he'll read the notes too and see
I'll
what you're
look through your
thinking.
notes and I'll go, you might want to change this word, you might want to embellish this a little bit, you might want to fluff that discussion. You probably need, when you send this out, since you have a deficit budget, explain to them that you didn't want to give them a deficit budget. This is just where you really feel the property needs to be. They need to look at these numbers and decide, do you increase the dues? And you know, you gotta explain it all. Do you increase the dues more than you already have? Or what items do you want to decrease to get a balanced budget? Or you have to remind them that they will be operating at a deficit, which is never a good thing.
Okay.
So
So
basically,
you'll get some advice like that, because I don't know where you are with your board. I couldn't have told you that Carl and Delay already had planned $5,000 worth of roof repairs when I know that they just did a major roof job 2 years ago. Right?
last year.
Or last year. Well, now this year is 2 years ago. So it's one of those things is this is where you are managing your properties. I will give you advice, but that doesn't mean I know everything that you know about your property.
Okay, so,
We're going to assume he's given me all of my advice, and I've taken it to heart, and I've changed things that I need to do. Now I'm ready to send it to my board. So I'm going to click Export to Excel, and wait while it thinks. And mine pops up here, so I'm gonna go click on it. And then this is what it looks like when it comes out. Now, although this doesn't look bad, it could look better. So you're gonna modify it and edit it to make it look the way it needs to. As of right now, I'm gonna take the special assessment out because we don't have a special assessment right now. So that doesn't
Take it out, don't think they can either.
And I don't know why it duplicates these, but it bothers me, so I'm gonna delete them. But you just want to, and I have weird pet peeves when it comes to Excel. So you will go through and you can adjust it. You can take out any line items that you're not using at all, and you can take out your actual, because that's just going to confuse them. You have to remember who your boards are. We don't need to give them all of the numbers.
That was just for our benefit.
Right.
Our creating it.
So you can delete that column, you can hide that column, whatever you want to do, make it go away. Now, same thing with the budget. You can leave it in there if you think your board can comprehend that this is the 2023 budget, or you can take it out. For Westwood, I took it out because they would get confused.
Most of our boards are not used to seeing that, but you get a couple that, and you'll know this about your boards. Which one asked you to give you a side-by-side comparison so they can look at the budget last year? Yeah.
Right. So he would be a perfect one. You could leave this in there because he's going to understand it once you point it out. You might start to
Ron would
point it
get
out.
confused.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Exactly. And this is where you have to know your boards. The report's going to be generally the same, tweaked for the property.
But the one thing that you do want to make sure that you do, like I said, you can take out these line items because they say 0, and that's just going to be weird. But you want to go down here to the non-budgeted items and remove this whole category because these are all the things that you're not planning on using again. So there's no reason for that to be there. Okay, duplicates. That's fine. So this, I think I bolded this whenever I did it for car and delay.
Okay, there's no title as to what that is.
Put a title. So instead of having to explain every single line item or every big adjustment I made in the narrative, you can save this, attach it to an email, and then you're explaining the overall report itself. So in this case, I'd be able to say, attached is your 2024 proposed budget. It is a different format, so you can look at each individual month or the annual. I would take this out for car and delay because they would get confused. At this time, we are showing a deficit of $14,000, and that does already include your 20% increase that we discussed for the regular assessments. So we will either need to look at adjusting expenses, adding a special assessment, or running on a deficit budget. They always like to meet in person, so then I would usually just say, please let me know when you want to meet so that we can go over these items specifically. But again, I would make this all pretty because I don't like when numbers don't have decimals and some do. But you can go through, clean it all up, make it look good, but then you're sending them this report. Rustwood was a really good one to test it on, and
Cause they have an eclectic group.
right, they have a very wide range of people, and they have 7-member board, so it's a lot of people. And Stacy, who was their treasurer, she loved it. She's like, oh, this report is so easy to read. I can look at each specific line item. And if there was something like I was specifically unsure about, so on theirs I said, hey, I didn't budget the exact amount for the attorney because I can't remember. Y'all set that up. Do you remember the exact amount so I can adjust it? And she's like, oh no, you guessed it right. We're good. But then I'm able to ask them the questions quickly, and they're able to refer the notes. If they have questions, they can send them back. And then once you've sent this to them, send an email, you go into Vantaca, and you will create your new action items for yourself. That say manager task, because it's a you task. To follow up with board.
Now, when we send the Excel, we send it as a board task, is that correct?
Yes. Or an email, whichever one you get more responses from
Okay,
your
no,
board.
send it as a board task.
Okay.
So one of the things I picked up this past week is, getting everything down in one place. We need to try to do less email, more board task,
Okay.
or even a board email, so it's all together in Vantaca.
Okay, so do we want it to be a board task or a board email?
I don't know the difference yet.
The
I think
board
we should-
email stays, no, the board
email
task.
goes as soon as it's sent.
Okay, so for this, it should be a task,
Yeah,
because
'cause
we
you
want
want
them to approve it.
And they'll be able to put messages and things in it saying, oh, I approve, or I have a question here, and you can respond in the
Right,
task.
yeah.
In the email, they wouldn't be able
Yeah.
to because they
But
closed
like
it.
what I want us to start doing, and this is off topic, I apologize, but, when we're doing, hey, do we need to have a board meeting next month?
Mm-hmm.
We need to start running those through Vantaca.
Okay. And then we said create a manager's task for how many days?
Create a manager's task to follow up with your board, 15 days apart, and then
Hold
send
Well, I
it.
used to have them on the
Pull
calendar,
the
so
100 days of budget, I don't know.
I'll have to look at it.
We'll send out exactly how to do that, because you want to make sure that you follow up with them at least 3 or 4 times until you're following up with them every single day, because it's like, I think no, your budget's approved.
Mm-hmm.
Can you do the-
system?
Wait a minute, can the board task be, so we don't have 15 board tasks for their budget?
Well, you won't have to, because you'll be able to send a message to the board task saying,
Just
following
saying,
up on this
okay.
again. It's a manager's task that we need to repeat.
And then if
So it's for
anything has to
ourselves.
be attached, it still can be attached to the board
Mhm.
task.
Can we create a tag that until they approve it, it gets them a daily,
Oh, we might be able to.
a daily reminder, need to vote on your budget, vote on your budget, vote on your budget, vote on your budget.
Play with that and see.
Hey.
So,
Not touching it.
now I'm not going to click the magic button, but we're going to pretend like everyone from Carndale, we've had our meeting, they've approved the budget, I've made any changes they wanted. All you have to do to finalize the budget is click approve.
Okay, if they've made changes though, go in and make the changes, but also make
A note.
changes
A note.
on your notes, why you changed it to whatever you did.
Go down to plumbing repairs.
Cause those notes are nice and handy to have.
Okay, I gotta tell you honestly, we don't wanna throw anybody under the bus, and most of this information, nobody but us will ever see, okay? But right there where if the board says, look, we've got a deficit, we can't do 27, let's plan for 20. And they change it, I would put over there where it says, based on previous year's numbers, board lowered from 27 to 20.
Okay, yeah, that sounds.
So we cover ourselves.
Just so we know,
Just so
nobody else
no,
will see
no.
this.
Oh, that's true.
Yeah.
Your notes are going to be in there next year when you go to do your budget. And then when you're leaving, going, did I lose my mind? Why did I only budget $20,000 when
Right.
obviously we have almost
Right.
30 in plumbing? He's like, oh, I did. It's fine. It wasn't.
And then if it's
Yeah,
something
the
that's
board.
caused a problem for the next year, you can say, hey, this is when you changed this,
Yeah.
this
Or
This
is
happened
caused
at
this.
a
Yeah.
property close to us.
Well, can,
When I did the first year, when I did their deal, the board went in, the budget said they should have had a $95,000 water bill. And the board purposely lowered it to 70,000, and they wanted me to explain why they were at 85,000 before the year was over.
Because y'all changed it.
But it's also good to have those notes in there because although this particular property probably won't have that much change in the board, you have boards that
Oh, that's
you'll get a
true.
completely new board, and the new board will be going, why did you do this? And you'll be able, I don't know, and you'll be able to look at your notes and say, oh no, I didn't. This was a decision of the board.
And what shows on the owner portal for the board, for the budget
Mhm.
is not this. It is just a report that
It's the
shows the
same thing
budget.
we see now
Mhm.
on our budget when we pull up the budget.
Yeah.
It'll be
Right,
the same thing,
right.
okay. But it won't have any notes.
It won't have the notes.
Okay.
So it's good to have those notes in there. The only time you see the notes is when you export it to Excel.
Okay.
And that's why we're sending that exported version
This is
to the board.
substantially easier, I think.
This is gonna be a lot easier.
And it's easier for them too, because when we hit the approve budget button, it doesn't have to go to Hilda to input in the computer. It's already in the computer.
And
you're
next year is the
So you
year.
think about,
Here.
even if Hilda's,
2025 is gonna be amazing. 'Cause
even
we'll
if
work those
Hilda
two
is
different
good enough
places.
to be able to do a budget an hour, right?
Yeah.
With 40 budgets, that's 40 hours, that's a week's worth of work.
Mhm.
Okay, so once you get it all approved, you've made any changes the board wants, you've made comments on what the changes were the board made, and you hit approve budget. What else do you have to do? You're not done with the budgeting process yet.
Then you have to go in and immediately, or make yourself a task depending on how quickly your board approves it, most likely immediately, send out a notification if you have an increase in dues, and notify Nabat, so that she can start putting it on resale certificates.
And we'll notify Nabai via,
Task, AR task.
I gotta make sure I show you, like on this one, what the percentages, how to do the dues increase. Cause it's easy now.
this makes sense.
Okay. Okay, so we have to still do Parkside budget since Parkside we just did Parkside budget. Well, we just did it, but
We'll check it and see how badly I messed it up.
oh, okay. Cause they have a huge,
Something happened.
their
Did
dues
your
increase
computer
September
sleep?
1st.
Yeah, I just went to do that.
So,
Okay, any questions that I need to record?
Mhm.
Then I'm stopping the recording.